I sat across from an old friend not long ago, and he had his Social Security statement opened on the table between us like it was a medical chart. He had just turned 61. He rubbed his knuckles while we talked. Slowly, almost absent-mindedly, the way people do when their body has been sending small warnings for so many years that the warnings start to feel normal. He had spent his life building things with his hands: ladders, roof lines, framing, scaffolding, the kind of work that pays you twice, first with a paycheck, then with mileage in your knees, your shoulders, your back, and your fingers. He looked at me and said, "Warren, the government is telling me I should wait until 70 because the check will be bigger. But if I wait until 70, I may not be able to enjoy the years I was trying to protect." That is the whole Social Security conversation in one sentence. Most people are told this is a math problem. The experts put a clean break, even calculator in front of you, and tell you to compare one age against another. Claim at 62, claim at 67, claim at 70. Add up the dollars. Find the crossover point. Pick the age that produces the largest lifetime total, if you live long enough. It sounds intelligent, it sounds disciplined, it sounds like the sort of thing a sensible person ought to do. But the problem with clean math is that life is not clean. A calculator does not know how your knees feel when you get out of bed. A calculator does not know what happened to your father at 68, or your mother at 71, or how many years of hard labor your body has already absorbed. A calculator does not know whether your work is still tolerable or whether it has become the kind of burden that quietly hollows a person out one morning at a time. A calculator does not know whether the years from 62 to 70 are your best remaining years to travel, to move, to see your grandchildren, to get into an airplane without thinking about it, to climb into an RV, to go where you want to go and enjoy what you built. That is why I want to talk about this differently. Not like a bureaucrat, not like a television planner trying to win an argument with a spreadsheet. I want to talk about it the way I think people should make almost every important money decision. First, understand the structure. Second, understand the traps. Third, make the decision in a way that serves your actual life. Not a theoretical one, because if you get this wrong, you do not just end up with a smaller check. You can end up with a smaller check, a smaller future tax window, a smaller survivor benefit for your spouse, and fewer healthy years left to do anything with the money you spent so much time optimizing. That is the first thing I want you to understand. This is not one decision. This is 4 decisions wearing one mask. The first mask is the obvious one, the permanent reduction. For anyone born in 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67. That is the baseline number Social Security uses to define your full benefit. If your full benefit at 67 would be $2,000 a month and you claim at 62, you are not taking a small trim. You are taking a permanent 30% reduction. That turns $2,000 into roughly $1,400. Not for a year, not until 67, for life. That part people know. What they do not fully understand is what happens after that. Social Security applies annual cost of living adjustments as a percentage of your base benefit. So a 3% adjustment on a $2,000 base adds more dollars than a 3% adjustment on a $1,400 base year after year. The larger base throws off a larger adjustment. The gap compounds. People look at the difference and say, fine, it is $600. It is not $600. It is $600 on day one. And then it becomes a wider and wider river because every future percentage increase is being applied to a permanently larger base on one side and a permanently smaller base on the other. The early claimant does not just accept a lower check. The early claimant accepts a lower growth engine. The distinction matters more than most people realize. Now here is where a lot of otherwise smart people make the second mistake. They say, I know I will take a smaller check, but I will claim early and invest the difference. 10 years ago, I had some sympathy for that idea. On the surface, it sounds rational. You take the money sooner. You keep more control. You let the market work for you. You beat the government by being more proactive than passive. That sounds clever. The trouble is that retirement does not punish only bad math. It punishes bad sequence. And sequence of returns risk is one of the most dangerous forces in all of retirement planning because it hits people exactly when they are least able to recover. Let me explain it simply. If you are 35 and the market falls, that is painful. But you still have decades of earnings, decades of saving, and decades of compounding ahead of you. If you are 62 retiring and taking a smaller Social Security check because you plan to invest the difference, you are not entering the market from a position of strength. You are entering from a position where your labor income is gone or fading, your healthcare costs are likely to rise, and your ability to wait out a bad early sequence is much weaker than people admit. A man retires at 62, takes the smaller check, and says he will make up the gap through investing. Then the market declines, not forever. It does not need to decline forever. It only needs to decline at the wrong time. The first few years after retirement are disproportionately important. If the portfolio gets hit early and withdrawals are happening at the same time, the damage is not symmetrical. You are no longer compounding from a clean base. you are pulling from a shrinking pool. And that combination can permanently impair the outcome, even if average long-term returns later. Look respectable on paper. That is what most spreadsheets hide. They show smooth average returns. Real markets do not deliver smooth average returns. They deliver chaos in clusters, and retirees do not retire into the average market. They retire into one specific sequence. That is the real bet hidden inside the invest. The difference argument: you are taking a government-backed inflation-adjusted longevity, protected income stream, and swapping part of its certainty for market exposure during the exact season of life when bad timing hurts the most. Can that work? Of course it can. If you have substantial assets, high flexibility, strong risk tolerance, and a shorter expected longevity, you can construct cases where claiming early and investing the difference works out fine. But that is not how most people actually arrive at 62. Most people arrive there tired, they arrive there worn down. They arrive there with just enough uncertainty to crave relief and just enough hope to believe the market will cooperate. That is not a strategy. That is wishful thinking dressed in financial language. Now I want to show you the third mask because this one almost never appears in the free online tools. If you are married and you are the higher earner, your claiming decision is not just about your check, it is about your spouse's future after you are gone. That part gets buried. It should not be buried. It should be in bold red ink at the top of the page. The higher earner in a marriage is not just choosing when to start a benefit. The higher earner is often choosing the level of the survivor benefit the other spouse may one day depend on. That means the decision you make at 62 can follow your husband or wife for another decade or two after you are dead. That is not a small footnote. That is a major capital allocation decision across 2 lifetimes. Suppose a higher earning spouse would receive $2,200 at full retirement age, but claims early and locks that down to around $1,540. Years later, that spouse dies. The survivor can generally step up to the larger of the 2 benefits. But the survivor is not stepping up to what the higher earner could have had. The survivor is stepping up to what the higher earner actually locked in. That lower number becomes the new ceiling. And once you see that clearly, the claiming decision stops being a personal timing choice and becomes what it really is: a transfer decision, a spouse protection decision, a widow protection decision, a long-tail decision. You can worry about headlines, you can worry about politics, you can worry that the program might change, but the lower earning spouse does not live on your political concerns after you are gone. They live on the check that survives you. If you are the higher earner, that ought to matter a lot. Now let me show you the fourth mask, because this one is where people accidentally give away one of the best planning opportunities of the entire retirement cycle. I call it one of the great hidden windows in retirement. You stop working, your wages disappear, you have not started Social Security yet, you have not reached the age where required minimum distributions begin. That creates a gap, a clean stretch of years when your taxable income may be lower than it will ever be again. That stretch is enormously valuable if you understand it. For many people, it runs roughly from the early 60s to age 73. And if you have money in traditional IRAs or 401ks, those years can be used to convert chunks of that money into a Roth IRA at comparatively low tax rates. That matters because traditional retirement money is not tax-free wealth. It is tax-delayed wealth. The tax bill is waiting in the wings. If you do nothing, that money remains in the deferred bucket until required minimum distributions eventually force income back onto your tax return, often in the years when you have the least flexibility and the highest risk of tripping other tax problems. But if your wage income is gone and Social Security has not started yet, you may have room to convert meaningful amounts from traditional to Roth at the 10% or 12% bracket. That is one of the best deals retirement planning ever offers. Pay a modest tax now on your terms. Reduce the future tax burden, shrink. Later RMDs move assets into a vehicle where future growth is no longer taxed. That window is real wealth. It is not visible wealth. It is planning wealth. The problem is that if you file for Social Security too early, you begin filling that low-income window with benefit income immediately. Your tax headroom narrows. The amount you can sensibly convert at attractive rates shrinks. The opportunity does not vanish overnight, but it contracts. And when it contracts, the long-term cost can be very large. People do not see that because they focus only on the monthly Social Security number. They are staring at the faucet and missing the reservoir behind the wall. A person can easily think they gain certainty by claiming early while actually sacrificing a valuable decade of tax planning flexibility. That is why I keep saying this is not one decision. It is several decisions braided together. Now let me bring in the part that makes retirees so angry when they finally notice it. Taxes in retirement are not neutral. They are full of thresholds and formulas that have not kept pace with reality. And one of the ugliest examples is the way Social Security benefits become taxable. Most people think of Social Security as a benefit. The tax code often treats it as bait. The mechanism is what the IRS calls provisional income. It is a separate calculation. Adjusted gross income plus tax-exempt interest plus half of your Social Security benefit. That formula determines whether none, some, or up to 85% of your benefit becomes taxable income. The thresholds tied to that formula are ancient. They were set decades ago and have never been indexed for inflation. That is the important part, never adjusted. So inflation has been doing the work Congress never had to vote on. More income drifts into the taxable zone every year, simply because the surrounding economy changed while the thresholds stayed frozen in time. That is how you create a tax increase without ever announcing one. It is elegant in a cynical way for married couples filing jointly. The meaningful threshold is higher than it is for single filers. But when one spouse dies, the survivor does not get a humane adjustment that reflects the loss of a household. The filing status changes, the breathing room shrinks, and that is where the widow's penalty emerges. A surviving spouse can find themselves living on less total income than before, but paying more tax because the thresholds applicable to single filers are tighter. The household got smaller, the tax structure got meaner. That is not a glitch, that is the design. Now combine that with the earlier survivor benefit issue. If the higher earner claimed early, the survivor benefit is smaller. If the surviving spouse also loses the more favorable joint filing thresholds, more of what they do receive may become taxable. And if that spouse must also draw from traditional IRAs to meet expenses, every dollar pulled from those accounts can push more Social Security into the taxable zone. That is what people call the tax torpedo. It is not loud when it begins. It is a slow structural pull. One extra dollar from a traditional IRA can create more than one extra dollar of taxable income once the Social Security formula reacts. The retiree thinks they withdrew $1. The return behaves as if the tax system found a way to make that dollar heavier. That is the sort of trap that free-claiming calculators do not show you. They are solving for one axis. Life is operating on 4. So let us put the stack together clearly. Claiming at 62 can create a permanent 30% reduction. That lower base grows more slowly, because future COLA adjustments are calculated off the smaller amount. If you are married and the higher earner, that lower amount can become the survivor benefit your spouse lives on after you die. Claiming early can also narrow the years in which Roth conversions are especially attractive. And later, the surviving spouse may get shoved into a harsher tax posture because the filing status changes while frozen Social Security tax thresholds stay where they are. That is the real picture. Not one number, a stack, a chain reaction, a sequence. Now, if I stopped there, I would be making the exact mistake I criticize. I would be turning a life decision back into a spreadsheet sermon. So let me say plainly what too many financial people are uncomfortable saying. Waiting until 70 is not automatically wise. Claiming at 62 is not automatically foolish. There is no moral virtue in delay. There is no moral failure in taking the money earlier. There is only fit. And fit depends on real life. I want you to think about retirement in 3 broad chapters. The first chapter is what many people call the go years. That is when you are still mobile, still curious, still willing to travel, still willing to get on a plane, into a national park, around a city, into a camper, out to see family, or through the experiences you imagine retirement would hold. The second chapter is the slow go years. You are still active, but more selectively, more appointments, more caution, more comfort spending, less spontaneous movement. Then the no-go years arrive. At that point, discretionary spending often shrinks whether you plan for it or not, because the body begins making more of the choices. Once you understand those chapters, the claiming decision changes shape. You stop asking only which age gives me the biggest total. If I live long enough, you start asking, when are the years in which money would actually matter most to the way I want to live? That is the question many people are too embarrassed to ask because it sounds emotional. It is not emotional. It is capital allocation grounded in the timing of human life. If your health is uncertain, your family history is poor, or your job is genuinely damaging your final healthy years, then a larger check at 70 may be economically impressive and practically useless. A person who can use $1,400 at 62 to walk through Italy, visit grandchildren 4 times a year, or leave a punishing job while they still have some energy left, may be making the correct decision for their life, even if the spreadsheet ranks it lower. Money is not only for maximizing theoretical totals. Money is for matching resources to seasons of usefulness. That is what intelligent allocation really means. At the same time, if your health is good, your job is tolerable or already behind you, your spouse depends on your record, and you have the assets to live off while delaying benefits, waiting may be the better move by a wide margin. In that case, you are not just buying a bigger check, you are buying a bigger inflation adjusted base. You are buying a stronger survivor benefit. You are preserving the golden window for Roth conversions. you are reducing the probability that later taxes and widowhood combine into a much uglier outcome. That is why I do not like simplistic advice here. Too much of the industry gives people clean slogans, because clean slogans scale. Wait until 70. Take it at 62. Invest the difference. Those phrases are useful for marketing. They are weak for planning. What matters is the total picture: your health, your spouse, your tax window, your withdrawal plan, your expected longevity, your work burden, your go years, your need for certainty. That is the real checklist. And the more I have watched people move from their late 50s into their 60s, the more convinced I have become that the key mistake is not that people choose the wrong age. It is that they choose an age while only looking at one layer of the decision. They look at the check, they do not look at the stack. And because they do not look at the stack, they make what felt like a local decision and discover much later that it had long shadows. So if I were making this decision again from scratch, here is how I would think. I would not start with a break-even calculator. I would start with 4 pages of paper. On the first page, I would write the simple claiming math. What is the benefit at 62, at 67, and at 70? What is the actual size of the haircut? How much larger does the gap get once COLA compounds from a bigger base? On the second page, I would write the spouse math. If I die first, what does my choice leave behind? What benefit survives me? How exposed is my spouse to a smaller survivor base? On the third page, I would write the tax window math. How many years exist between retirement and age 73? How much room is there for Roth conversions before Social Security starts? What does claiming early do to that room? On the fourth page, I would write the life math. What is my health telling me? What is my job taking from me? When are my go years most likely to happen? What would I actually do with the money if I claimed early? What would I actually do with the money if I delayed? Then I would look at the pages together, not separately together, because the right answer is not hidden inside any one of them. The right answer appears only when the pages are stacked. If you are the higher earner, married, in reasonably good health, and able to fund the years before claiming from other assets, delay deserves serious respect. If you are single in worse health, heavily burdened by work, and staring at a go window that may close early, claiming at 6 the 2nd of May be a completely sound move. If you are in the middle, which is where most people are, then the decision probably should not be made in haste, in fear, or in reaction to one alarming headline about Social Security funding. It should be made after you understand what you are trading, that is all. This is what disciplined money management actually looks like. Not acting like life is certain. Not acting like markets are smooth. Not acting like a bigger number at 70 automatically means a better outcome. And not pretending that feelings have no place in the decision when the feelings are really signals about health, work, time, and usefulness. There is no virtue in having the largest check in the cemetery. There is no virtue in claiming early just to feel like you beat the system. There is only the question that matters in almost every serious financial decision. What problem am I really trying to solve? Am I trying to maximize monthly income? Am I trying to protect my spouse? Am I trying to preserve tax flexibility? Am I trying to stop a job from taking the best remaining years of my body? Am I trying to spend while I can still enjoy the spending? Until you know which problem you are solving, the calculators can only mislead you because they are answering a question you may not actually be asking. The people who make the best retirement decisions are rarely the people with the most elegant spreadsheets. They are the people who match numbers to reality without lying to themselves about either one. That is the standard. And if you meet that standard, you can claim at 62 and be right. You can delay until 70 and be right. You can take a hybrid approach to the rest of your assets and still be right. The key is not the slogan. The key is whether the choice fits the picture. There is no perfect age. There is only the age that correctly prices your body, your spouse, your taxes, your market risk, and your healthiest remaining years. And once you see the decision that way, it stops being a Social Security question. It becomes what it always was, a life allocation question with a government payment attached to it.